Sarah Hanson-Young, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start on this bill to ban kids from social media. You appear to be on a unity ticket with Elon Musk, of all people, when it comes to opposing this. Can you explain your position?
Well, we're worried that this is a blunt instrument that's not actually going to make the platform safer, isn't going to make being on the internet for kids or young people safer, or anyone for that matter. And look, I'm a mum. I've got a teenage daughter. She just graduated this week from Year 12. Hi, darling.
Congrats.
But so I know what it's like to be, as a parent, trying to work out where the limits are. How do you educate? How do you put in place some safety mechanisms? How do you have a conversation with your kids about what is going on and are they able to see the red flags? But just kicking young people off social media until they're 16 and then dropping them in the deep end with no guardrails, no lifeguards, no skills to deal with it is really not the answer. And of course, these big tech companies, what they don't want government doing is going to the heart of their business model. What young people offer these companies is their data. They have targeted advertising directly to them. They're targeted with advertising, dangerous algorithms. That's all the stuff that drives the massive profits for these big companies.
I'll come to some of those aspects, but at the moment you talk about kids getting dropped into social media at 16. Well, currently they're getting dropped in there at 11 or 12 years old.
Well, and but this is the thing, David. We've got to do better at making online safer for everyone, and particularly our young people.
But the problem is,
prohibition isn't going to help that. We've got to put in place the guidelines and the guardrails.
But mums like you mentioned your experience, no doubt are able to talk to their kids about how to navigate this world. But a lot of parents may not be in that situation. And take a look at the figures. They show that since social media came along, we have seen a big increase in mental health hospitalisations, particularly for girls. It's up 81% since 2010. Is that related to social media? Well,
the experts are saying what we've got to do is engage with young people, put in place safe spaces online for them. I've been the Deputy Chair of the Parliament's long-running inquiry into all of these issues, and every expert we had said kicking young people off doesn't make things safer for them. Yes, we've got to deal with the mental health issues. Yes, we've got to deal with social isolation. Yes, we have to make sure young people know when something's wrong and they can raise a hand and say, can someone come and help me? But you don't do that by prohibition.
Can a 12-year-old do that? Are they equipped to be able to know when things are spiralling, when those eating disorders, mental health problems are starting to build?
But what we need to do, David, is stop that dangerous content being rammed down their throats.
But how
and you do that by taking away the profitability of the tech companies.
So
they make their money.
Explain to me how you do that.
We prohibit the scraping and the collection of data of all young people that is then sold to advertising, targeted advertising. We stop the dangerous algorithms being able to target young people.
Any government stop the algorithms you talk about, stop the feed, the content? How does a government police what a young person is seeing?
We do things like putting in place a duty of care on these platforms, like they've done. Well, they're not. They've announced it, but it's not on the table. And this is one of the things I'm going to do this week. When their social media bill comes before the Parliament, I'm going to move an amendment to put in place this duty of care, because they really care about young people. They'll do this now.
Okay, the Minister, to be clear, announced this the other night. She gave some detail around the plans. You're right, they haven't done it yet.
The EU and the UK are moving in this space, and Australia is well behind this. What the Minister wants to do is put in place the first age ban in the world without having it scrutinised, without having listened to the experts. It doesn't matter whether it's mental health experts or tech experts. People are worried about the consequences and also worried about whether it can even be done. The government doesn't want to hear that. That's why there's only a 3-hour Senate inquiry tomorrow before this piece of legislation gets rammed through.
Okay, there are legitimate points around the technical aspects of this, but at the end of the day, do you really think a Duty of Care Act or whatever it is can make social media safe for a 12-year-old, 13-year-old girl?
Well, I think a lot of parents, the tech platforms themselves, many of them have the 13 age limit. But what I'm interested in is making sure we get that harmful content off these platforms for everybody. That's what you've got to do. These companies are making profits, billions and billions of dollars, because this is their business model.
They'd make less if kids weren't on there at all.
Well, you reckon kids aren't going to get around this?
Sure,
I mean, look,
sure, but this would have an impact, wouldn't it? It would mean less kids on.
It's a blunt instrument that doesn't go to the heart of how these companies are making their money and why they're targeting individuals. The EU is trying to do this. The UK is trying to do it. Australia should work out how we make these platforms safer for everybody, really hit these tech companies where it hurts. That's their business model. Have the guts to do that. Have the guts to hold them to account.
This would hit their business model. This is not going to help their bottom line, is it? Getting kids off social media.
Well, look, I think what this policy is about and why it's being rushed, the Prime Minister wants to end the year with Peter Dutton to say, look, folks, you won't have kids sitting on their phones at Christmas. That's what's going on here. And I was listening to a very astute, the words of a very astute 15-year-old this morning who said, this is so that the oldies can feel like the Prime Minister cares about their kids. Look, we need better reform than that and better laws than that.
To be fair, is it possible?
It's not even coming into place till July.
Is it possible, though, that some of the politicians, parents and others who want to see this ban do actually care?
Of course they care. Of course they care. And we all need to be doing better to hold these tech companies to account. But this is fool's gold. This is for politics, not for substance. And what I fear is that you put in place this, the tech companies will work a way around it, the kids will work a way around it, and government goes, oh, look, job done. We need to make it safer for everybody. Not just safer for the Prime Minister to have a good Christmas.
Now, when it comes to misinformation and disinformation on social media, you've acknowledged this is creating serious harm to democracies, public health and public discourse and social cohesion. Why aren't you willing to back this bill to tackle misinformation and disinformation?
I read the comments of David Pempathy in the Sunday Mail, my hometown paper, this morning, and he said, this was with all good intent, this policy, but badly and poorly explained and implemented. The practical implementation was just not there. And that's true. And mis and disinformation is a problem right around the world. It's not just in Australia. We've seen it unfolding in the US during this election. But unless you deal with it properly, rather than this kind of half-baked option, which is what the government had put on the table, trying to be all things to all people.
So what should they have done? What would you like to see?
Well, again, we need to go back to how you manage the proliferation of the dangerous and harmful content. You have to tackle the algorithms, and you've got to tackle the sponsorship of these posts that go viral. The companies know when these companies know.
This bill made it very clear that ACMA, the regulator, would have the power to order a digital platform to take down misinformation, disinformation that was spread by bots and troll farms. So it would have specifically done that.
Well, it actually didn't have takedown powers, so that's a mistake. But
it did for serious harm and for those that content.
What they had to do was what this bill was trying to do was require the tech companies to self-regulate. Here's a bunch of areas that we're worried about. Very broad definitions, very vague definitions. You go and sort it out, and if we don't think you're sorting it out properly, we'll come and get you.
That's what they do at the moment. Isn't that the status quo? They're currently policing themselves.
Yeah, and this was more of it. Putting Elon Musk in charge of truth, I don't think is going to make the world safer.
But he is at the moment. So wouldn't this have been an improvement?
No, it was going to lock in the regulation to say that he could. And, of course, there was a huge carve-out for the mainstream press. So, if the Murdoch press want to post something online that is demonstrably wrong, that couldn't be tackled. But, if another organisation did, the tech company would have to make the...
But Elon
Musk... I don't think it matters whether it's Rupert Murdoch or Elon Musk.
But on social
I don't think they should be able to promote mis and disinformation.
Elon Musk has, I think, withdrawn, hasn't he, from the voluntary code of conduct. This would bring him under something that's actually more enforceable by a government regulator.
Yeah, well, I think if you think Elon Musk is going to do anything that the government say...
he's not if there's no bill.
It won't be unless you put in place the fundamental underpinning laws around their business model, the profitability, the algorithms, and making them legally responsible.
He'll be jumping for joy that they're going to withdraw the bill now, won't he?
Well, look, we need to go back to the drawing board. They stuffed this one up, David. They couldn't even communicate it. The minister hasn't been out there selling it. It's, as I said, the intent was well-meaning. But
do you welcome it being withdrawn?
I do. I called on the government to withdraw it on Friday, and it's good that they have. But we've got to get back to the real problem, and that is how these companies profit off these dangerous posts. If you want to stop the dangerous posts spreading like wildfire, hit them where it hurts, and that's the dollar.
The other news that we've announced this morning too is gambling ads. There won't be any movement on that in this final week of Parliament for the year. What's your reaction to that?
Oh, we're doing, the government and the opposition are ramming through a ban on social media that was introduced on Thursday. We've got a joke of a Senate inquiry for 3 days tomorrow, but they can't do gambling. I mean, really, talk about priorities. We know the Parliament has been through a number of inquiries in relation to gambling. The harm that is done to Australian families every year because of gambling addiction is extraordinary. We are the biggest losers in Australia when it comes to gambling loss in the world. That needs to be tackled. And rather than doing the hard work, rather than standing up to the vested interests of the gambling companies and the big sporting codes and the big media companies, Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton are squibbing it.
On, Senator, one of your other portfolio areas, the environment, the government needs your support for its nature-positive bills. This would create an Environmental Protection Authority, which would be able to impose much heavier fines for breaches that damage the environment. You've dropped demands for a climate trigger to be included in any environmental approvals, but you're still demanding a national ban on native forest logging.
We want an end to native forest logging.
So is that something you'll insist on, or if you don't get it, can you still vote for this bill?
Look, we've been really pragmatic here, and I just want to say this, I don't want to vote things down, I want to get things done. I'm trying to get outcomes in the Parliament, whether this is on the environment legislation, the Made in Australia legislation, housing, schools funding is also listed for this week. We want to get things done, and we want to help the government get better legislation.
So what does that mean on this bill, the nature positive laws? Would it be better to have them in place than the status quo?
Well, what we've said to the government is if you're going to put in place an environmental watchdog, let's make sure they have some rules in place that they can use to protect the environment. At the moment, the laws are so broken, and we've put aside our demands around the climate trigger because it was very clear that the Prime Minister was not going to budge on that. He said he had to win votes in WA, he wasn't going to move on climate. Okay, we'll have that fight at the election, and we'll come back after the new Parliament. But if you want a watchdog in place, give them some rules to implement to protect nature. We have all of these loopholes in our laws that allow the continued destruction of native forests and deforestation, koala habitat, the habitat of the swift parrot. It's out of control.
But if you don't get that, would it be better to have this EPA or not?
Well, I want the EPA to be able to do something. And here is an opportunity to do something. And I am worried, what happens if the Prime Minister doesn't win at the next election? And we've got Peter Dutton at the helm. Let's make sure there are some laws in place that actually protect nature before it's gone.
But are you prepared
stopping
to vote
the
this down, is
deforestation?
the question. Are you prepared to actually vote
No, we're not talking about voting anything down. We're talking about improving this legislation and working with the government to put in place something that is genuinely nature positive. I'm glad that the new offer that I put on the table last week has reignited conversations.
Have you been talking to Tanya?
I have been talking to the Minister. And
do you have more chats this week?
I hope so. I hope so. I want to get something done. Protecting the forest, protecting the Great Australian Bight, protecting koala habitat before they're all gone. These are the things that could be done and should be done and would be a win-win. A win for the government, a win for the environment, a win for Australia.
Is this more pragmatic approach, I think you called it, where you're willing to drop some of your demands on this and other areas, housing as well? Is this a reaction to the disappointing Greens performance in the Queensland and ACT elections, the drop we've seen in the polls and the popularity of Adam Bant? Is this a shift that we're now witnessing? Look,
I think it's about us saying we're at the end of the year, an election could be called any time, we want to get some things done, and we don't just want to hand the keys to Peter Dutton. I mean, if you're worried about what the country's going to look like after the next election, all you'd have to do is listen to some of the things he's been out spruiking, taking cues directly from Donald Trump.
But the Greens, I'm asking about the Greens, is this a deliberate shift?
Well, we have come into the Parliament to get outcomes. We're here this week. We've put a long list of bills to the government to say these are things we're willing to get through.
Are you responding to what voters have been saying?
Of course we're responding to people, because we, I hear people all the time saying, politicians just talk about themselves, politicians don't do enough, where's the focus on the environment, where's the focus on cost of living, let's get it on. I genuinely believe that the Parliament has an opportunity this week, the government has an opportunity this week. You can work with the Greens to get some good stuff done, or you can work with Peter Dutton that will empower him and give him more of a platform. And I think that's dangerous.
Final one.
I think that's dangerous.
Final one, Senator. On the 5 remaining members of the Bali Nine who have been nearly 20 years in a Bali jail, the opposition, and we'll play this in a moment, the Shadow Attorney General has raised some concerns and questions around all of this. Do you think it's reasonable to be concerned about returning them to Australia now?
I mean, cruel and heartless, frankly. Cruel and heartless. And if you want a glimpse of what a Peter Dutton government will look like, this is it. Don't be fooled of Dutton in lamb's clothes.
Sarah Hanson-Young, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.